Tonight on Mark Latham's Outsiders, what's gone wrong with our schools? We've got news of a Sydney high school principal who's been making excuses for radical Islam. We've also got a stunning tape. You want to know what's happening in the classrooms? We've got a tape of masturbation classes in a government school in Victoria for students as young as 13, part of the wacky safe schools type agenda to sexualise our young people. We're going to put the focus on what's happening and what's gone wrong with our schools. We've also got Zeg's cartoons, the Outsiders Outhouse, the Left Lunatic of the Week, another guy arguing with statues. Great show coming up. Thanks for watching. Trigger warning viewers, you've entered a very unsafe space. This is Mark Latham's Outsiders, Australia's most politically incorrect news and current affairs program. We believe in free speech here. We believe in pushing back against all the politically correct madness, the identity politics, the social engineering that's running through Australia on a weekly basis. Please remember our website, marklathamsoutsiders.com. You can go there, urge all your family and friends to sign up for all the Rebel Australia activity. marklathamsoutsiders.com. And we've got a very important show this evening. I'm coming to you in front of the magnificent Camden Fire Station in the historic township there in southwest Sydney, near where I live. Love Camden. It's great to be sitting in front of that wonderful vista to give you all the important straight talk. Straight talk is what we deliver here. We don't have any agenda. We just give you the facts that you normally don't see in the mainstream media, the stuff, the other side of the story. A lot of the material we present here you just won't see in the mainstream media because they've got their list of taboo subjects, things that can't be spoken about. Well, bugger all that. We're going to give you information and you make up your own mind. We believe in the viewers making up their own mind about the facts, values and opinions here in modern Australia. Now, I want to start at the top of the show with a couple of very important update items. You might remember last week's program we played the wonderful, very emotional and touching video ad from Dads for Kids, a tribute to all the loving dads coming up to Father's Day. Well, after that appeared on Wednesday, we found out that this was somehow knocked on the head by the free-to-air TV stations in Australia. It apparently needed some political authorisation. What's that? What's happening there? Dads for Kids had put their ad out for 15 years in a row without any need for political authorisation. Apparently it was linked to the same-sex marriage debate, again a sign of political correctness censorship, that they had to change their arrangements, and all of a sudden saying that dads love their kids is a political statement. Again, political correctness gone loopy in Australia. So the free-to-air commercial TV stations didn't air this particular ad. It was a disgraceful situation. I hope all the dads had a wonderful day last Sunday. I did on Father's Day, absolutely wonderful with my 3 kids and my loving wife. We had a wonderful time to reflect on the meaning of love and family life, the nuclear family, such a wonderful institution. So we're going to play that ad again. Okay, you didn't see it on the commercial TV, another area where you don't get all the information in the mainstream media. Here's our tribute to all the dads, all the wonderful dads, through Dads for Kids. A great outfit.
Hush, little baby, don't you cry. Daddy's gonna sing you a lullaby. When you're sleeping safe and sound, you've got the proudest dad in town. I remember when I first saw you, your heart beating as you grew. We'll read you stories to help you dream. Your mommy and I are a perfect team. I can't wait to hear you sing or watch as you put on a wedding ring. One day you'll have children too. Remember the times I sang to you.
Well done, Dads for Kids, but how crazy has the debate become now when fatherly love is defined as a political institution? God help us. God help us that fatherly love is now said to be too political to be screened at a time when Australia is also having a same-sex marriage debate and postal vote. Absolutely crazy stuff, but I'm glad we showed that again, and it is a wonderful tribute to fatherly love. Now, the other update item, we had Chris Shortis here last week. He was facing the Melbourne Magistrates Court under the Victorian statute, the Racial and Religious Tolerance Act, section 25(2). He'd been charged, and the decision came down yesterday there in Melbourne, where Shortus and the other two from what's known as the Bendigo 3 were convicted and fined $2,000. Now, I think it's the double standard that most people would be worried about. I thought the protest there, the mock beheading they had of the dummy out the front of Bendigo Council, it was stupid and unnecessary. But did it deserve to go to the criminal courts? Absolutely not. Did they deserve to be charged under any statute? Absolutely not. Could they be allowed to undertake, albeit a silly political protest in the circumstances, campaigning against the mosque application in Bendigo? Well, you'd think it could have been allowed to pass through without all the cost, the expense, the worry for them, the unnecessary legalism that we saw in Melbourne. But they've been convicted and fined under that statute, and it sets a rule now, a rule in Victoria at least, where you can't imitate or mock Islamic State. That's what they were doing. It was a mock Islamic State beheading on a dummy, no one harmed. You can't imitate Islamic State in Victoria under the law, not because Islamic State are evil, it's because some Muslims somewhere, unspecified, might take offence, might be upset about it. There was no plaintiff in this case, there was no evidence of anyone being incited or offended by the actions, but still they've been convicted, and I think it's plain wrong. If you want to find a law that's worse than 18C federally, well, it's 25(2) in Victoria. Not much coverage about it in the media today, but wow, it's a blow to the principles of free speech and freedom of political protest in Australia. And the double standard, people say the system sucks, the system's rigged, the system has two sets of laws out there. Well, this is concrete proof. Kathy Griffin, as we pointed out last week, coming into Australia, booked in to the Sydney Opera House, even though she had the mock Donald Trump beheaded head in her hand there. Mohammed El Mouli with his dreadful statement about white men needing to find a cemetery or to neck themselves. The Hyde Park mum who gave that sign to her child about death to the infidels, that double standard. Last month we had a district court in New South Wales finding it's okay to call the then Prime Minister, Tony Abbott, a CUNT in public. And we've also had the dreadful situation, I put out a video, where Pauline Hanson copped all sorts of abuse under the banner of comedy in the Griffith Review, funded and organised by Griffith University in Queensland. So the double standard is this: seemingly anyone from the left can get away with anything they say or do in public life, or if you're a conservative or a nationalist in these debates, they throw the book at you as soon as they can find any glimmer of a problem in the laws, these offence-based laws, these restrictions on free speech in Australia. So the system does suck. And what happened in the Melbourne court earlier this week is evidence of a double standard in Australian public life, that there's absolute free speech, open slather for lefties to say and do whatever they like. But if you're on the other side of politics, you cop the book being thrown at you. We saw it, 18C, Bill Leak, the university students in Queensland. The hypocrisy and double standard goes on and on and on. But we'll keep fighting against that as hard and vigorously as we possibly can here at Mark Latham's Outsiders. Now, the issue I want to raise throughout the rest of the program this evening is about what's gone wrong in our schools. Somewhere in the past decade, there was a fundamental shift. There was a time when schools tried to develop the academic skills, the vocational skills of the students so they could get a job, they could lead a productive life. The school was there to accept the children from the families and try and give them all the academic knowledge they needed for the future. Somewhere it changed, where teachers and education bureaucrats thought they were parents or politicians. And I've got two examples of this, stunning examples this evening, to give you about this shift. The first one is a school principal in Sydney who thinks he's a politician, because after the Manchester bombing, you'll remember that tragic Manchester bombing, the Ariana Grande concert in Manchester, England, the principal, it was reported to me, the principal stood up in front of the school assembly at Menai High School in southern Sydney and started making excuses for radical Islam. Well, that's not the time and place to be making excuses. He was part of the Be Nice Brigade. If we're nice to radical Islam, the problem might go away. What we need in Australia is a be serious approach to school radicalisation, to any hint of supporters of terrorism in Australia. I'm not saying that about him, but what I'm saying is he sent the wrong message to the school students. Now, I want to get the details clear here. I'm going to show you exactly the questions that I asked of the principal through the New South Wales Department of Education and the answer he gave, so you've got all the facts that are available. Now I want to bring up here the questions that I asked of the Menai High School principal. They're coming up on the screen. And did he at the school assembly in the days following the Manchester Arena bombing in May say, and this is based on credible reports given to me, 1, the people who did this were not doing it in the name of Islam. 2, Islam is a beautiful religion. 3, if you look into history, you'll see many similar things were done in the name of Christianity, really, blowing up pop concerts. And 4, if any students were offended by his comments, they should go to see him in the principal's office. Now here's the response that came back from the departmental spokesperson, and it reads as follows. Following the Manchester bombing, the principal of Menai High School spoke at a school assembly regarding the tragedy. The principal's intent was to challenge the notion that this event had been done with any legitimacy in the name of Islam. The principal reminded students that the thoughts of the school community needed to be with the innocent bombing victims and their families, and in closing the assembly, the principal invited anyone concerned about his comments to talk with him. And no students or staff or parents went to the principal's office on that basis. Well, on the latter matter, can I just say that it's hardly surprising that students as young as 12 and 13 didn't front up to the principal's office and say he was a dill, that he had this wrong, that he'd been making excuses for radical Islam. No kid wants to be identified as a troublemaker in the school that way. You need a pretty brave 12-year-old, 13-year-old to go talk to the principal in those terms. But the point here is there's no denial. You see in the response there's no denial of what was said, that he said that the people doing this weren't doing it in the name of Islam. Well, that's untrue. It was clearly being done in the name of radical Islam, and he should have made that point to the school assembly. There's no denial of the fact he went on to describe Islam as a beautiful religion. Now, for the people who died in Manchester, their loved ones, their family, how disrespectful to be talking of the religion in the name in which this was done as a beautiful religion. Totally inappropriate. Totally inappropriate to send that message out to the school assembly. And then the tangent of saying if you look into history, you'll see many similar things were done in the name of Christianity. Well, Christianity is not without fault, but it hasn't gone around blowing up pop concerts, young people, innocent young people, in the name of a radical doctrine of its religion. So these comments were just plain wrong. It's part of the Be Nice Brigade, making excuses for radical Islam. It's not on. There are 4 things that principal at Menai High School should have said to the students. 1, sympathy for the families of those who lost their lives. 2, the evil, the absolute evil of what happened. 3, that this happened in the name of radical Islam. No ifs or buts, no doubts about it. Happened in the name of radical Islam. That's a straight fact. And finally, the 4th thing he should have said was that if you hear anyone in the school who's got any sympathy for that doctrine, please come and see me. Come to my office. That's the reason kids should have been going to the office if they heard any sympathy for radical Islam in the school playground and around the school traps. So the principal there is a sign of what's gone wrong on this all-important issue. I mean, we've had enough problems in Sydney with radicalisation. We've had the problems at Punchbowl Boys High School where the principal was sacked because of Islamification of the school. We've had Mrs A on this program talking about the horrendous things that were done to her at Punchbowl Primary School. We had the example at Hurstville Boys High earlier in the year where the young Islamic fellows didn't have to shake hands with women at the school presentation. Their religion was more important than the respect of the treatment of those women up on the stage. So we've had these problems. It doesn't help for the principal at Menai to be so cockeyed, so out of touch, so skew-if in his values, to be sending out the wrong message. And anyway, who's he to define what's legitimate and illegitimate Islam? Who's he as a theologian? What are his qualifications? I've asked that subsequently and got no response from him or the department. I just think it's plain wrong. And we need to know more as parents about what's happening in our schools. I pay tribute to the people at Menai who told me about this. There's no denial here from the principal. The response is unsatisfactory. We can do a lot better than this. But the main thing is, when teachers decide to become politicians, as parents, we need to take action against that. So I say to all the parents out there, ask your kids at the end of every day what was taught in the classroom, what was said at the assembly at school that day. And if you've got problems about politicisation of the school, then talk to other parents and raise them with your elected members of parliament, and hopefully we can get some action. Too much politics. We've had the social justice warriors all over our schools. We've had ridiculous stolen generation stunts in some of the schools in recent times. We had that wacky outfit in Victoria talking about failure week, all this political nonsense that's run through our schools. At Menai, it's been a disgrace. The principal there needs to do a lot better and become part of the Be Serious Brigade in explaining the nature of radical Islam and pushing back and setting the right example to the students in front of him for whom he's got the care and to some extent the control in the school day. So that's my perspective on that. A very important issue. Worrying news out of Menai High School. The remainder of the program, we're going to have a look at issues of where teachers and principals, education bureaucrats think their parents. They're running this gender fluidity, sexualisation agenda through safe schools, respectful relationships and other programs. So after a short moment, a short break, I'll be talking to Marika Rancy, who's led the charge against safe schools in Victoria, a very brave parent, about her experience and some of the things that she's got directly from the classroom will absolutely surprise you, shock you and lead to the need for further action against these principals and these teachers who go way beyond the academic teaching to kids. They think they're politicians, they think they're parents, doing all the things that parents do regarding sex education for children. It's gone way too far. I'll be back in a short while speaking to Marika. Welcome back. Before talking about what's happening in Victorian schools, I just want to say a few things about the debate on same-sex marriage. The No campaign has put out their first ad and it's led to all sorts of demonisation and misrepresentation of what they're on about. It is relevant to what's happening in our schools, the whole gay marriage debate. Let's have a look at that ad.
School told my son he could wear a dress next year if he felt like it.
When same-sex marriage passes as law overseas, this type of program becomes widespread and compulsory.
Kids in Year 7 are being asked to role play being in a same-sex relationship.
You can say no.
Authorised by S. York, Sydney.
Now it needs to be understood that the first woman in that advertisement saying that her child, her son, was told he could wear a dress at school, the son goes to Frankston High in the southeastern part of Melbourne, and there's no doubt that wearing a dress as uniform is available to him. Frankston High is part of the Safe Schools program, and here is their literature, their promotional material with a boy in a dress. So Safe Schools at Frankston is very much reflecting what you see just there, a boy wearing a dress. So there's no doubt that part of the ad is valid. The second person in the ad who spoke is Dr. Pansy Lay, who's been vilified. Get Up have sponsored a petition to try and get her run out of the medical profession. This is how the Yes campaign are losing votes, because they're being seen as old-fashioned Stalinists. Fancy trying to rub a doctor off the medical roll simply because she's got a political opinion. So good on you, Pansy Lay, to standing up to all the bullies and vilification. And the third woman who spoke in the ad said that there were role play activities in the school. Well, of course, under Safe Schools, this is an integral part of it. The left are sort of crab walking away from the reality of Safe Schools, but have no doubt. The Safe Schools program was about penis tucking and breast binding, and it also had an exercise brazenly promoted where the students, young students in high school, were told to role play an activity where they had to pretend they were aliens who had arrived on planet Earth without a penis or without a vagina, and the question was, what do we do now? So role playing has been integral to the nature of the Safe Schools program, and that ad is 100% accurate and raising concerns that are completely valid, because what needs to be understood about the same-sex postal vote is it goes way beyond homosexual marriage. The current act is about heterosexual marriage. We all thought same-sex marriage, they'd just add extra clauses to cover same-sex couples. It goes way beyond that to allow any two people to marry. And it brings in the whole range of hundreds of gender and sexuality definitions that the left have created in recent times. And it brings in gender fluidity. So the truth is, if the Marriage Act contains gender fluidity provisions for marriage, well, any teacher will be teaching that in the school, a backdoor way of teaching Safe Schools, even if the state education minister has tried to get rid of safe schools, or it's been defunded federally. So we need to make that clarification. What's happening in our schools in terms of sexualisation agenda is just horrific. This is not the role of teachers to talk about this stuff. It's the role of parents to talk to their children in these terms about these issues. One of the parents very bravely in Victoria who's led the charge against sexualisation, gender fluidity in safe schools is Marika Rancy, and she joins us now. Thanks for joining us, Marika, and can I say congratulations on the work you've done in recent months in exposing the nature of the Safe Schools program and related programs in our schools. In July you had an incredibly effective video that had over 4 million views. It went viral. Tell us the background of that and how you became concerned about sexualisation in high schools.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me on the show. Basically, it was my children who first alerted me to what was happening at school. We've got a very open family situation, and we always talk about what's going on at school and in their day. And so it was a couple of years ago when my son first alerted me to some of the teachings that were happening. And as I hadn't been notified of any of it, it was quite shocking. So I have actually been speaking out about the program for a couple of years and trying to tell everyone in every community I can. And then one afternoon, I actually just went out onto my back deck and decided to speak into my mobile phone. I had a blog page. I'd got interested in politics just because I realised that this program was needed to be fought at a political level. And so I'd kind of started getting interested in politics, and I had this blog page. There was about 300 people on the page, and I recorded my story. And that night it had hit 1.1 million. So I had obviously no idea. You can't predict those things, but I guess at the end of the day I'm not surprised, because you don't come between a parent and their child. And if there's something we all care about and it's universal, it crosses political parties, cultures, everything, it's our children. So, yeah.
And is it true that your son came home and said he'd been told how to make a vagina and shown a dildo? He's in the early years of high school, and that must have been a huge concern to you.
It was, yeah. So he got in the car, year 7, and he, we always go, how was your day? And he got in the car and he said, the first thing he said was, oh, well, I had to make a vagina at school. And I was trying to work out what he was referring to. I thought it was this art class, or why on earth was he making female genitalia at school? And as we talked more about it, it was very clear that he had to craft a vagina. They were split into different groups, the boys and the girls, and he had to make it. They were given things like plasticine and pipe cleaners, and obviously I thought, well, this is health class. Are we talking reproductive system? What are we doing here? And it was very clear that it was made as a sexual organ. So he had to sculpt it as he knew it, and then he was redirected to make the clitoris and the labia. I mean, really, 13 years old, and he said to me, Mum, it was really creepy.
And Safe Schools goes well beyond that, doesn't it, with the promotion of gender fluidity, the idea that a boy can be a girl and next day back to being a boy.
Yes.
Where do you think this has all come from? Because traditionally parents would play this role. Where did we get to the point where principals and teachers started to think they were the parents of children, when in fact, while they might do a good job in academic areas, they still remain relative strangers to our families?
Yes. Well, that's absolutely my main concern. So I'm very involved and engaged with my kids. They're my priority, and I think most parents feel the same. So the fact that I hadn't been alerted to this new program. Now, I need to clarify, that was actually in the sexuality education program, so not technically a Safe Schools resource, but the lines are all very blurred. They do tend to cross over a lot. But yeah, that was the frustration. There was no conversation, and as I looked more into the curriculum, none of us, really knew. None of my friends knew what was going on. It was this hidden kind of curriculum. So yeah, I think parents are their kids' first educators, not the school.
Absolutely. Parents need to play the role, and the school is there primarily for academic and vocational education, not to pretend that they've got a parenting role. The school's got to accept the students as they come out of the families instead of engaging in so much sexualisation of young people, because, you know, this goes down to 12 and 13-year-olds. We've got a video clip here and an audio that I think people will find quite confronting. A lot of people say, what is actually happening in the classroom? Let's play this from a Victorian high school, Year 8 students, 13 years of age. Let's have a listen to what was promoted by way of what you'd have to call masturbation class.
It's very easy for boys, okay? It's like, ooh, there's a penis and I touch it and it feels good. And that's what I like to say to girls. For girls, it's a little bit different. For girls, it's a little bit different. Do girls masturbate? Yes. Are they maybe a bit more reluctant to? Probably. Should girls masturbate? Yeah, why not? It's just about exploring your body. Girls, I would say it's about exploring your body and feeling good in a private setting. Okay, so it doesn't necessarily have to do with your reproductive area. It can be touching your breasts or having a bath, and I don't know, it's going to be individual for you. But yeah, sure, girls can masturbate, and if it feels good, why not? All right. With the fingering part, I would say if it hurts, you're doing it wrong. Okay, it shouldn't hurt. Anything to do with sex in that area, if it's painful, if it's emotionally painful or physically painful, then just maybe take a step back from the situation, reassess, because what we're dealing with here is something that should be really special and enjoyable for you and your partner or future partner.
Now, Mareika, I'm sure around the country people will be asking, is that the reason we send our kids to school? The reason as taxpayers we fund school education? That's a recording. The video there is obviously shot down into the floor, but the key thing is the audio of the teacher's voice promoting masturbation techniques in a class that's mixed, boys and girls, as young as 13. Your reaction?
Yeah. Well, I think it's clear actually on the audio. You can actually hear those the kids in the class, and to me their sounds are feeling very uncomfortable. So the girls are giggling, and you can hear a couple of gasps and shocks. I just think that is going way too far and taking liberties with our children that no teacher should be taking. Things have to be age appropriate. I mean, I've been very open with my kids, but what I do is that I wait for them to come and ask me a question. And for each child that has been very different. You know, kids develop at different ages, but this was just totally inappropriate. I just think that's absolutely disgusting. I think there's a really fine line here between sex education. To me, that really is a sexualising, you know, encouraging the masturbation, just not appropriate.
So even if we haven't got safe schools, you do in Victoria, but in other places, this stuff can be taught under the banner of sexuality education. You've said as a parent you're very open about these things. I think these days most parents are open about it.
Absolutely.
But our attitude would be it's a conversation in the home, one-on-one with a son or a daughter at the appropriate age. It's stunning, isn't it, that relative strangers in the classroom could be trying to second guess what's happening in the home. Where does it end?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you need a relationship of trust, and that's a parent-child relationship and conversation, and they've just usurped our rights as parents. You know, the fact that we haven't even been involved in the discussion. You know, my parenting style is to always have been supportive of education and to back that up, and I think most parents are the same, you know, and if they're going to be talking about such sensitive topics, let us know. So if those conversations need to continue, you know, that we can enhance that learning. But there's a real arrogance to this program, and a real they've just gone way too far. It's an overreach, I believe. I do need to clarify though, Mark, there's a lot of discussion. I keep getting accused, you're talking about sexuality education, not safe schools. The lines are very blurry. The sexuality education, though, has come out of the same department. And that's a concerning department. The head of that department is a guy by the name of Gary Dowsett, and we don't know how much involvement he's had with that curriculum, but he certainly has written an article in 1982 where he refers to pedophilia being as sexuality movement. So, you know, that has come to my attention after I had concerns about the sexualising nature of some of these programs that my kids were telling me about. So, you know, very, very concerning. And I think it's very difficult to teach, you know, they say safe schools isn't sexuality education. Well, how do you teach sexual diversity and all those complex issues without teaching sexuality education?
Well, of course it is, and Victoria, unfortunately, has become the social engineering capital of Australia under the Dan Andrews government. Andrews himself is a shocking hypocrite. He hasn't got his own kids in safe schools. He's got them in the Catholic system. They're not exposed to gender fluidity madness. So he's a hypocrite. What do we do in Victoria? I can tell you, around the country, people sort of take pity on the people living in Victoria inflicted with this stuff, particularly through the schools, the young people. What can be done down there to get rid of Andrews and his kooky cultural Marxist government?
Yes, yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, I think you know, we've got a vote coming up at the next election, so he needs to be out. But you know, it's still a while away. I think these programs and the entire curriculum needs an overhaul and needs to be looked at. You know, it's interesting that the Latham report actually looked at the Safe Schools program and suggested the removal of the -18 website. But Daniel Andrews has decided that that's a perfectly appropriate website and continues to promote it. The Department of Education are now denying a lot of these facts and myths, and I've debunked every myth and fact with their own curriculum and their own evidence on my Political Posting Mama page. But no, I mean, heads actually need to roll for this. I really think that that parents are going to have to. We can't stop. We can't let them get away with this. The Doctors in Schools program is another frightening program. Where I just feel it just totally usurps the rights of parents again.
Well, thanks for your important role. It's absolutely critical that parents like you are brave enough to stand up, to articulate the concerns, and we find out more about what's actually happening in the classroom. It's been closed off from parental scrutiny. You're playing a tremendous role in bringing proper scrutiny to how the schools are being run. Congratulations on your work. Thanks for joining us here on Mark Latham's Outsiders, and we'll be back in just a short moment to have a look at Zeg's cartoons and the outhouse. Welcome back to Mark Latham's Outsiders. Don't forget our website, marklathamsoutsiders.com. Sign up for all the Rebel Australia activities. Now, in the final part of the show, we've got the delight of presenting the great Zeg's cartoons. Wow, aren't we fortunate to have someone who brings the week together with cutting commentaries, wonderful graphics. Zeg, you've done it again. Let's have a look at your first cartoon, which goes to the persecution of Dr. Pansy Lay. There it is. She's being sacrificed on the altar of cultural Marxism and political correctness. Her crime was to appear in the ad and to argue that the definition of marriage shouldn't be changed. She's Dr. Pansy Lay, and she's being persecuted and sacrificed in the name of all the PC arguments. Pansy Lay, you've become a hero to those of us who believe in free speech, and you've also become a hero to those of us who look for strength in standing up against the left-wing march through institutions. You're doing a wonderful job, and we pay tribute to you. And Zeg, in his second cartoon, looks at another recent controversy, the special person's cake. Where did this come from at Woolworths? We've seen a few letters about PC at Woolies in recent times, and Zeg here is reflecting on the fact that apparently the Bundaberg Woolworths, of all places there in central Queensland, had the special person's day cake instead of the Father's Day cake that you'd expect. I got one for my Father's Day and loved it. Woolies, what's gone wrong in Bundaberg? Zeg is saying that you've got all these politically incorrect, wacky supermarket choices. White Man Invasion Day for Australia Day, Happy Fertility Day for Easter, Anzac Day being redefined as Imperial War Day, and on it goes. Finally, with Christmas as the absurdity of a Happy Winter Solstice Day. So we really have lost the plot when Mother's and Father's Days are being redefined as Special Persons Day. Hopefully Woolworths won't be doing that again. Well done, Zeg. Magnificent stuff. Absolutely legendary. And now we've got, talking of Zeg, the Outsider's Outhouse. He's graphic there, he's got me on the Thunderbox. The Outhouse, the last place where you've got freedom of speech and expression in Australia. Don't forget to send in your thoughts about the issues of the day and the program. The email address is there on the top left-hand side, mark.latham@therebel.media, mark.latham@therebel.media. And our first item comes from Callum Roy in New South Wales, and Callum writes as follows. He wanted to voice his concern about the campaign on gay marriage. He'll be voting yes, but I found the yes campaign to be shameful. So an interesting perspective from Callum. He writes that the no campaign features some mums who raise their concerns. That's the ad we just spoke about earlier in the program. The tagline is you can vote no, not forcing anyone to do anything. Nowhere in the ad was there a comment saying everyone who votes yes is a horrible person. Callum has recently been a member of his local Labor Party branch but gave it away, and his Facebook stream is full of yes campaign material. I cannot find one yes campaign ad that doesn't spend most of its time demonising those who will vote no. And then I see my Facebook feed full of people attacking the individual mums on the ad, slandering them as liars and bigots, and personal attacks on these women who simply voice their actual concerns. Well, more than that, Callum, they voice the actual truth of the matter. And we thank you and we thank them for it. The second item is another remarkable one. It comes from Tony Carter in Perth, and he writes as follows. Here's an amazing double standard for you, Mark. Check out the WA Government's Department of Communities, Child Protection and Family Support website. Up front, the Women's Domestic Violence Helpline says this service provides support and counselling for women experiencing family and domestic violence. Call the phone number that's listed. Fair enough. But over at the Men's Domestic Violence Helpline, the corresponding statement is, and I quote, this service provides counselling for men who are concerned about their violent and abusive behaviours, and call the number. So no allowance there for men who themselves might be victims of domestic violence, and that does happen in some significant numbers. So Tony writes, now why would men be thinking the system is loaded against them, that they can only ever be in the wrong? Give me a break. Well, good point, Tony Carter, to say that. I have looked at this particular website. He's 100% correct in the way that information is presented, and it's such a lopsided presentation that men would have every right to think they're only being portrayed as perpetrators instead of, on some occasions, being victims of domestic violence. Another terrible double standard in the way information is presented in Australia out of these government departments. And finally, on the outhouse, we've got John Marsh from Brisbane. We love John's contributions. He's got one here with a statement and then a graphic. I wonder if the King of Thailand has been apprised of the dark grammatical forces at play in the production of this Air Asia advertisement. And there it is on the billboard, presumably outside Brisbane Airport. Cheap enough to say, Phuket, I'll go. Well, good stuff. Hopefully the King of Thailand's got a sense of humour. That's good old-fashioned Aussie humour. We love that stuff. Thanks for sending it in, John. And hopefully it won't be taken down by the Thought Police, and least of all the King of Thailand. Good on you. Thanks for sending in, and I encourage everyone to send in their feedback to the show. I get a lot out of it each and every week. Now finally, speaking of weekly events, we've got the Left Lunatic. Zeg's got the take. It goes to Bill Shorten. Another guy, all this crazy arguing with statues. The Leader of the Opposition, the Alternative Prime Minister, has been arguing with statues, and Zeg's portrayed him there fantastically as an old Greek or Roman statue, half broken away. Bill Shorten, with a demented look on his face, he joins all the Left Lunatics of the week. Bill Shorten, I say to you, stop arguing with statues. Get on with the issues that the Australian people want addressed. And there are so many of them. Bill Shorten, he was put in his place by Anthony Albanese on this statue issue. Thank goodness for that. But still, Bill Shorten, a deserving winner of the Left Lunatic of the Week. And that, for our Wednesday night, is the show. Thanks very much for watching. Hopefully we've given you all the other side of the story that you won't be seeing in the mainstream media. Some fascinating stuff there. What's happening in our schools, boy oh boy. We've got to take a bigger interest. Parents just don't know the things that are happening in the classroom at the school assembly. We've shone a light on that tonight. Thanks for your company. Thanks for watching. And we'll be back next Wednesday night. See you then.